All right, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds like it's pulled straight from science fiction, but it's actually grounded in some really fascinating cutting-edge research. We're going to talk about a common animal dewormer and a specific kind of diet. Now, on their own, they seem totally unrelated, right? But put them together, well, they might just represent a whole new way of thinking about how we can attack cancer.
So I'll just ask the question right up front. Could a simple, cheap animal drug really be a key to fighting something as complex as cancer? I know, it's a huge question. It almost sounds too good to be true. But that's the central mystery we're going to unpack today. Could a staple from the veterinarian's office hold a powerful secret for human oncology? Let's find out.
So meet our unlikely hero, a drug called fenbendazole. If you've ever had a dog or worked with farm animals, you might have heard of it. It's a broad-spectrum dewormer, it's been around for decades, and it's known for being incredibly safe, with super low toxicity. So the question is, how on earth did this humble medicine jump from the vet clinic into a cancer research lab? And that, right there, is where this story gets really interesting. See, it turns out fenbendazole isn't just a one-trick pony. When scientists took a closer look, they realized it doesn't just do one thing to a cancer cell. No, it launches this surprisingly sophisticated multi-pronged attack. So let's break down exactly what that attack looks like.
Okay, so here's the high-level battle plan. First, fenbendazole goes in and just messes with the cancer cell's internal skeleton. Second, it flips a switch on one of our body's most important natural cancer-fighting genes. And third, and this might be its most devastating move, it cuts off the cell's main power supply. All right, let's dig into that first line of attack.
So inside every single one of your cells, there's this incredible network of tiny tubes called microtubules. You can think of them as the cell's internal highway system. They're absolutely essential for moving things around and, most importantly, for pulling the cell apart into two new daughter cells during division. Fenbendazole goes right for these highways. It destabilizes them, causing this catastrophic traffic jam just as the cancer cell tries to multiply, which leads to what's called mitotic arrest and then cell death.
Now, to really get why this is so cool, let's compare it to another drug, colchicine, which also messes with microtubules. Colchicine is like a nuclear option. It completely obliterates the highway system and as a result is super toxic to our healthy cells too. Fenbendazole, on the other hand, is more like a strategic strike. It's a moderate disruptor. It does just enough damage to stop cancer cells in their tracks without causing a ton of collateral damage to our normal cells. And that just right approach is its secret weapon.
And here's another really clever part of its strategy. You see, a lot of cancers get smart. They develop resistance using this molecule called P-glycoprotein, or PGP. Think of PGP as a bouncer at the club door of the cancer cell. Its job is to physically throw out chemotherapy drugs the moment they walk in. Well, it turns out fenbendazole wears a clever disguise. The bouncer doesn't recognize it, so it just slips right past, which means it has the potential to work even against some of these really tough, drug-resistant tumors.
So, while it's creating all this chaos with the cell structure, fenbendazole is also landing this devastating one-two punch. It activates P53, often called the guardian of the genome, which is a crucial tumor suppressor that can basically tell a cell to self-destruct. And at the exact same time, it starts to starve the cell by blocking its ability to use glucose, its favorite food. And this brings us to a really critical question. Why is cutting the fuel line so incredibly effective?
To get that, we have to zoom out a bit. We need to look at a fundamental weakness that most cancer cells share, a discovery that was actually made almost 100 years ago but is now making a huge comeback. It's a kind of Achilles heel that's all about how cancer cells make energy.
And this is it, the Warburg effect. Way back in the 1920s, a scientist named Otto Warburg noticed something really odd. Cancer cells are total sugar addicts. Unlike our healthy cells, which are really efficient at burning fuel with oxygen, most cancer cells are stuck using this primitive, super inefficient process of just fermenting sugar for energy. And they do this even when there's plenty of oxygen around. This isn't just a strange habit, it's a core vulnerability we can exploit.
And that right there is the key difference. Your healthy cells are like these sophisticated hybrid cars. If you take away their gasoline, which is glucose, they can just seamlessly switch over to electric power, using a clean alternative fuel like ketones, which our bodies make from fat. They are metabolically flexible. But cancer cells? Nope. They're like old-school gas-guzzling muscle cars. They are addicted to gas and only gas. If you cut their fuel line, they just stall out. This inflexibility is their fatal flaw.
Okay, so if we know that cancer is a gas guzzler that's addicted to sugar, how do we actually use that information? Well, this leads us to a really powerful therapeutic idea, a kind of master plan for systematically weakening cancer, by targeting this exact vulnerability. It's called the press-pulse strategy. The whole idea, which is actually borrowed from the study of extinctions, is beautiful in its simplicity. You don't just hit the cancer with one thing. You deliver a 1-2 punch. First, you apply a sustained chronic press that puts the cancer's metabolism under constant low-level stress. Then, you follow up with a short, sharp, acute pulse that pushes those already weakened cells right over the edge.
So, first up is the press. This is the long game. It's all about changing the body's entire metabolic environment. The goal is to lower the amount of the cancer's favorite food, glucose, while at the same time giving your healthy cells a fantastic alternative fuel that they can thrive on, like ketones. You're essentially creating a food shortage for the bad guys while feeding the good guys.
And now for the pulse. With the cancer already stressed out and starved from the press, you hit it, and you hit it hard, with an acute attack. This is where a drug like fenbendazole fits in perfectly. By blocking that glucose uptake even further, it acts as a powerful pulse, delivering a targeted shock right to the cancer's main energy supply. It's basically the knockout blow to an opponent that's already staggering.
So here's what this can look like in the real world. That press can be therapies like a well-formulated, medically supervised ketogenic diet or different forms of calorie restriction. Both of these lower your blood sugar and raise ketones, creating that constant stress on the tumor. Then, for the pulse, you could bring in a glycolysis inhibitor like 2DG or our friend fenbendazole, or even things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It's all about building a framework for combining these different, often non-toxic therapies to create a powerful combined effect.
So, what does this all add up to? Well, it suggests a really fundamental shift in how we think about fighting cancer. Instead of the old model of just trying to poison the cancer cell faster than we poison the patient, this is about smartly exploiting a core metabolic weakness that actually separates cancer cells from our healthy cells.
So let's just recap what we've covered here. We started with a humble deworming drug, fenbendazole, and saw how its surprising three-pronged attack really shines a spotlight on cancer's metabolic fragility. We learned that this fragility, called the Warburg effect, makes most cancer cells metabolically inflexible. They're basically sugar junkies. And finally, we saw how the press-pulse strategy brilliantly uses this weakness by combining a dietary press with a drug pulse to starve the cancer while nourishing the body. The huge takeaway here is that this opens the door to a potentially much less toxic, more targeted way to manage cancer.
And look, this isn't just some fringe idea from out of nowhere. The very researchers who pioneered this press-pulse concept describe it as a compelling therapeutic strategy for managing cancer with minimal toxicity. And that quote really gets to the heart of it. We're talking about a potential paradigm shift towards therapies that are not only effective, but also work with our body's healthy cells, not against them.
Which kind of leaves us with this final thought to chew on. For decades, the war on cancer has been about building stronger and stronger weapons, bigger and bigger bombs. But maybe, just maybe, the future isn't about more firepower. Maybe it's about better intelligence, about understanding the enemy's fundamental weaknesses and exploiting them with strategies that are more elegant, more targeted, and ultimately just a whole lot smarter.